What's going on, guys? Welcome back. So in this one, we're going to actually finish this project, and actually I'm going to show you how do you make this and write this code. Now what is going to be really interesting for you is to actually see how do you code when you're using object-oriented programming and when you actually are using packages. And what makes this really interesting, another thing, is that at the end of the day, you're going to realize something. At the end of this practice, you're going to realize that it's actually really easy to write a code when you're using object-oriented programming, and at the same time, it's really easy to understand the code, because if I actually just drop the finished code in front of you, you will actually be able to understand, like, even if you don't know what is this thing, you're going to be able to understand what this code does. And like, that's the whole point of object-oriented programming, is that you write programs in a way that are just kind of easy to understand when even someone is looking at them, instead of those complicated programs full of if and else and all that stuff. You're going to be able to create really a simple program, complex programs, actually using really a few lines of code. So that's the whole point. All right. So as you see, I got my I got my PyCharm here, and in this case, we're actually not we're just going to hide this project folder. Again, we're just coding in the main Py. Everything else is just already predefined, and we don't need to touch it. And I also have my documentation, the module documentation, so that way we actually take a look at the classes that we're going to be using, methods that we're going to be using, so all that stuff. So the first thing we're going to do is actually we're going to print a report, right? So one of the things is that we have a few report classes or methods. One's the coffee maker class report, and one is going to be, I believe, one's going to be the money machine class. So so this report is going to print the current profit, or like how much money basically you have in there. And also this one is going to print the report of all resources, right? Available resources. So that's the first thing we're going to do, and let's actually do that. And again, I'm going to use a lot of prints, so that way you understand exactly what we're doing. All right, so I'm just gonna start by just creating actually creating an object, right? That's the first thing we're going to do. I'm going to use create an object called money machine, and we're going to call the money machine class, right? So just like that, we call this class, right? This is the one that we imported here. So money machine class, we created an object. This is our object name, and as you see, we use snake case because it's just like a variable basically, right? And we called our class. And if you remember, when we actually when you call a class, let me actually do it one more time so you see it. When you actually call a class, you see there's a C icon, right? So it says that it is a class. All right, so that's that. Now we can actually use this object to report and to have it to make a report. So let's actually go back to, there you go, the money machine class, right? And if you take a look, we can actually print a report. So let's actually do that and take a look at it. So I'm just gonna say money machine, all right, and we're going to say report. Perfect. So if I actually run this, just like that, we got our report, right? So as you see, it's going to give us $0. So that shows us exactly how much money we have in this, which is $0. All right. So that's the first step, right? The second thing is actually we need to report another thing. We need to actually print another thing, and that is the coffee maker itself, how much resources we have available. So I'm just going to actually print one more, or actually create another object. I'm going to call it coffee maker. Let's call it that. You can call it whatever you want. It's your object, right? So I'm going to call this coffee maker. We're going to call the coffee maker class, and there you go. So just like that, we created that, and I'm going to make the coffee maker report, and there you go. And there you go. So just like that, we got the money report, how much basically profits or money we have inside the machine, and also how much resources we have available. All right, so that's the first step of this thing, print a report. Now, next stuff, or actually just everything else, basically this is just going to be the functionality of the machine, which is check and see if the resources are sufficient, and process money entered by the buyer, check and see if the transaction is successful, make coffee. Everything else, these basically 2, 3, 4, 5 are basically done by by every, like, all the methods that we have. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to build. Now let me actually show you a few things that we're going to be using. All right, so we're going to be using the get items, and we're going to be using what else we're going to be using. We're going to be using the make coffee. Obviously we're going to use the is resources sufficient to check and see if the resources are efficient, we have enough to make the coffee, and also make payment to receive payment. All right, so again, just like if you can actually just have this open, and that's like what I usually have like to do when I'm using object-oriented programming, to look at the documentation of whatever I'm using. It's really helpful. All right, anyways, so the first thing I want to do is we're going to use a while loop, right? Because this is going to be a machine, and pretty much when we run a machine, right, like when we have a program that is continuously working, we need to use a while loop, and that's what we're going to be doing. And with that being said, if you remember, when we were actually making while loops, one of the things that we did was that we had this thing that would keep the while loop on as long as we needed it, right? For example, if you remember when we made those games, we had this is game on or is game running or something like that. And as long as that thing was true, we would run the program, right? So that's another thing that we want to have, right? I'm just going to say is on equals true. So again, this is just a variable to keep the program running, and you'll see when we get to the while loop, there is an option to turn it off, and that's what we're going to be in. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to create an object and call the menu. So if you actually go back here, we are going to, there you go, the menu class. We're going to call the menu class. So we're just going to create an object. I'm just going to call it menu equals menu, and we're going to, there you go, call that class, and there you go, we just created our object. Now the next step is actually create the while loop. All right, so I'm just going to say while is on, right? So again, keep in mind that when you actually call something like this, for example, like when you actually just say while is on or while variable, you essentially are 10, because by default it is true if you're using a Boolean value. So by default it is true. So basically what I'm saying here is that while this is true, do this, right? So that would be the whole program essentially. So that's basically the idea, in case if you're confused why we don't have anything else, right? So anyways, so I'm just gonna say the first thing we want to do is actually get the items from the menu. All right, so that's like, because what I want to do is I want to display a message that says, hey, what do you want? Like, what would you like? Would you like a latte, coffee, whatever you want? So before we do that, we need to get the options. And if you actually go to the documentation here, there is a method for it. Let me actually find that. So there's an like get items. Let's see, there you go. So there's a get items. I got confused for a second. There is a method called get items, and what is this going to do is return all names of the available menu items as a concatenated string. So basically it's going to give you all this stuff in one string. So that's really nice, right? So we can actually say options equals, and we're going to say menu, and again, this is the object that we created, right? And we're going to say get items. There you go. So just like that, we actually have the items now. Now I can actually use it. So I'm just going to create another variable, call it choice. This is basically what user is going to ask for the machine to make, right? So I'm just going to call this choice, and we're going to say input. This is a basic input, and we're going to say what would you like, and we're going to enter all these options. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say options, and also, because again we're calling this, we need to make it a f string. There you go. So now you see it is actually correct. All right, so perfect. So now we actually got this. Let's actually run this to just make sure it works. There you go. What would you like? And for example, I'm just gonna say latte, and it is what it is. All right, so anyways, so I'm just gonna stop this real quick. There you go. So anyways, so far it's working fine. So next step is, if you pay attention, one of the issues that we have right now is I can't turn this thing off. So for example, if I say latte, I just have to enter something consistently. What if I want to turn this off? So I want to make sure that we have an option that we can turn this off. All right, so I'm just going to stop this real quick and just clear this up. There you go. So what I want to do is I'm going to say, if we're going to use an if statement, if choice is off, what I want to do is I'm going to say is on equals false. So basically this is going to allow me to turn it off, so I can, like, you know, close the program without forcing it. So I'm just going to say, for example, latte. All right, so that's one, and I'm just going to say off, and it exits the program. Perfect. So we got that at least going on. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to actually give it another option. This is basically for the operator. Again, like, you know, I want us to have an option to actually print a report. So like after it makes a, you know, after it makes a latte, for example, I want us to have an option to get a report, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say elif. We're going to use the elif option. We're going to say if choice is what we call this. Let's call it report. All right. So if choice is report, basically we're asking for a report, right? So if the choice is report, what we're going to do is we're going to generate a report. If you remember, we have our reports here. So just like that, I'm just going to copy this and throw this right here. So coffee maker report and coffee maker object report. So again, these are different. If you remember, these are different classes we're calling objects that we created from different classes, right? So just like that, we pulled this out. Now, if I actually run this program one more time, again, let's just say latte. Again, that portion is not working yet. I will make that work right now. But let's say I want to call. I'm just going to see. I want to see how much resources we have available. There you go. So just like that, we got the money and we got the resources that we have available: water, milk, and coffee. Perfect. All right. So let's just turn this off again. There you go. So just like that, we got our program so far. Again, obviously right now it's not making anything, right? So next step is to actually get it to make something. So we got, you know, so far we got the off option, which is going to turn it off, the report option, which is going to, you know, generate a report, and the final option, I want to you know, I want it to be in a way that anything else that we write, like when you type, is going to just you know, see if it's a drink that we have available. All right, so I'm going to say else, that would be, you know, that would be the anything else that they type, right? So this is where we want to define the drink. So I'm just going to say drink, okay, equals, and we're going to say menu find drink, and we're going to say choice. So the idea with this is that the choice, which is the user's choice, right? So let's say they write a latte, we're going to say, okay, this is going to equal, you know, assign this value variable to menu item find drink choice. So like basically that is basically what the user's asking, you know, find the drink from the menu. So if you actually go back here, find drink, there you go. So if you remember the menu class, we have this thing called find drink order name. So that would be the name of the, you know, whatever that user's choosing. In this case would be, for example, latte, whatever. And again, so I see what we're telling is that, hey, we want this variable drink to be basically, you know, whatever, if the base be the whatever you have available. For example, if they have the latte available, because again, this is calling a you know, calling a class. What is going to happen is that it's going to check if they have, like, if it has that drink available. So again, searches the menu. Take a look at the documentation. It searches the menu for a particular drink name, returns a menu item object if it exists, otherwise returns none. So let's actually print this real quick, and let me actually show you. So I'm going to print drink, and let's actually take a look at it. So let's print. Okay, so I'm just going to say latte, and let's see, what do we get? There you go. So see, we get the menu, like the location in the RAM, essentially. That means that it's working, right? So that's awesome. So I'm just going to turn this off real quick again and get rid of this. All right, so we have that. Now we actually want to see if the resources are sufficient and if the payment is successful. Now we need to basically get payment and also, you know, check for resources. So the next thing is we're going to use the resource sufficient. Perfect. Take a look. We got the class. Easy, right? So what we're going to do is I'm going to say if coffee maker, this is the, by the way, this is the object we created, right? Is resource sufficient, and we're going to put our drink in there. So again, what we're telling it is that, hey, check and see if you have enough resources to make this drink. See guys, that's like the beauty of object-oriented programming. It is really like easy to like process and understand it. So that basically this is what we're asking. If coffee maker, you know, the resources, you have enough resources to make this drink that we're asking, right? And again, this is going to check and see like if it's available on the menu. And it says, okay, check and see if we got this like available and we have enough resources. All right, so good. Now, another thing we need to check is the money, right? And we want to see if the payment is successful. Basically, we need to ask the user for payment, right? And this is another thing that we're going to throw in. And money machine, make payment. This is like, again, make payment. And we're going to say drink cost. So again, the idea with this is that, again, it's going to see if the payment is successful, ask for the money from the user, and if there's enough money, it's going to just process the drink. All right, perfect. The final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get it to actually make the coffee. So there you go. So we got this class here, or we got this method here that says make coffee order. So again, parameter order menu item, the menu item object to make deducts the required ingredients from the resources. That's very important, right? So it takes the resources out. So now we are going to say coffee maker dot make coffee, and we're going to say drink. Perfect. So now this is going to make us a drink. Now let's actually run it. And it's going to tell us, okay, we got this much resources available. I'm just going to say latte. Perfect. So please insert coins. Now this is where it's asking money. So I'm going to say 10 quarters, 10 dimes, 10 nickels, and 10 pennies. All right. So it's going to say, here's your $1.60 change. Here's your latte. Enjoy. Perfect. Okay. Now I want to show you, like, again, some of these interesting things here. First, let's say I'm going to order another drink. I'm just going to say espresso. All right, so it's going to say please insert coins. I'm going to say 10 0 0 0, and there you go. So it says here's $1 in change, here's your espresso, enjoy. So what would you like? Again, so now if I actually report, let me actually do a report here, and if you take a look, we see we got the money, right? And we got the water. And if you take a look, if you remember when the program started, we had 300 milliliter of water. Now we got 50. So you see, it is deducting the material or resources from the memory as it's making these drinks. So again, this is like the idea of this like coffee machine. Now let's see. Let's say I'm just gonna say another latte. Okay. There you go. See what it says as, hey, sorry, there's not enough water. Sorry, there's not enough milk. Perfect. So guys, now our actual coffee machine is working. So it's like it's asking for money, and it's deducting the resources and all that stuff. Let's actually do another report. Again, I see we got the money in there, and this is basically money that we have in the machine, and then the remaining resources. So again, really simple. And let me actually stop this, and this is what I want to show you. Really, that's like the beauty of this. If you take a look, let me just get rid of the comments here. So if you take a look, we did this entire, like, really kind of somehow complex program in literally like 26 lines. If you remember in the few previous sections, we were getting into really complex codes, right? Like we had a situation where like one of our codes for like 60 lines of code for really simple functionality. And this is like the beauty of object-oriented programming. Like I see the code is really clean, really simple. But at the same time, if you take a look, it is making sense. Like I see we got like real words here: coffee machine reports, and if someone doesn't understand anything about this code, they're not familiar with what is this code exactly. If they take a look, they're gonna be able to get an idea. It says, oh, okay, menu, get items. Okay, what would you like? And then say money machine, report, coffee maker, report, drink, menu, find drink and choice. Again, like I see, it makes sense in a sense. And that is the whole point of object-oriented programming, because it just makes it easy to understand, makes it easy to read, and at the same time just makes coding a lot modular and much better and like much more cleaner. So guys, let me know if you have any questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually leave the final file to this main py file in the resources section for you guys, so you can download it. Hopefully you got it right, but if you don't, I understand. One of the things I want you to do is I want you to practice. That's really important. It can get a little bit hard, and the object-oriented program is one of the easiest and at the same time hardest concept of Python, especially as we move forward, where I'm going to talk about creating our own classes, which is a whole different animal, and it's going to be really, really fun. So again, I recommend you to practice it, try to understand it. By the way, I'm going to like comment this out, so that way you guys can actually see, for example, what each line does. So it's just going to be easier for you to read it and everything. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions, guys. If not, I'll see you in the next video.